Good day, my name is Nathan, and the occupation that I will be analyzing is workers commuting to their jobs. The four personal factors to consider: physical will be walking, running, cycling, or driving to work. Cognitive factors would include scheduling appropriately, timing bus arrivals, and selecting a time-efficient route for travel. The emotional factor will work in collaboration with the cognitive factor, as it is involved with balancing other stresses and demands of life to make work less of a chore and the commute to work a bit more enjoyable. The underlying incentive to go to work, perhaps to sustain livelihood or support loved ones financially, is an example of the spiritual factor. In my opinion, spirituality is essential as willpower is a strong requirement to religiously make work on time.
Hi, my name is Kelsey and I'll be telling you about the occupation of students in which I observed Monday morning in Halifax last week. While I was on the corner of Spring Garden and Dresden at 8:30 in the morning, I was able to observe many different occupations as pedestrians ran up and down the streets trying to start their day. One of the main occupations I noticed was the amount of students that were rushing up Spring Garden towards their schools. Students are easy to pick out in a crowd as they are usually carrying some form of bag to hold all their books and schoolwork, or sometimes walking alone, or sometimes walking in groups of other students in a social manner, all heading towards their classes. You will see students who just came off buses who have to travel distances to get to and from school, and also those who live close by and can take a 5 to 10 minute walk to get to school. School is something that is culturally wide normality in which many people choose to pursue in. Individuals take it upon themselves whether or not to attend a post-secondary school to further their education. With taking on the role of being a university or college student, an individual is setting themselves up for a lot of difficult years, but with the end goal and result in mind of a future career. School can feel very rewarding because of this. The stress that comes along with school, however, is usually an outcome of the overload of schoolwork that comes along with the average of 5 classes and possible labs for those classes. Students can find it difficult to make time for all of their homework while trying to keep their social life and hobbies intact. Students have to understand how to create time for everything that comes with being in school, such as time for homework, getting to classes on time, understanding and planning their schedules, all of which sometimes must be done in addition to part-time jobs that students may need in order to afford school, living, or leisure. Throughout this project, I found observing people can be very interesting. Aside from students, I was able to witness and observe many types of people and occupations that I haven't previously thought much about. I was able to understand the process people must deal with for their daily schedules and tasks. Overall, I was able to view students from another perspective aside from my own in order to understand the way students with different lifestyles interact with their daily lives.
Hi, I'm Shelley, and I was at the corner of Spring Garden Road and Dresden Row at 12:30 p.m. and again at 6:30 p.m. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny fall day, and I happened to notice that among all the pedestrian traffic that you see going up and down Spring Garden Road, that there are a tremendous number of visitors and tourists this time of year. And you can tell that they're visitors and tourists because they look a little different than the people that you normally see walking up and down the sidewalks of downtown Halifax. They tend to be middle-aged or older. They definitely are not traveling with children or teenagers, and they tend to walk at a more leisurely pace than the people you see rushing to and from places that they have to be. In order for a person to be any kind of tourist in a place that's not their home, they have to feel reasonably confident about their ability to navigate or explore in a foreign setting. They need to feel safe, they need to feel welcomed, and I think they also need to be comfortable and treated very well. I think it's good for people to travel. I think it's good for them to experience different parts of the world and to see places that they may have only heard about or had different impressions of. And in that sense, I think travel is something that's very good for a person's psyche and their spirit. The city of Halifax makes a real effort to welcome visitors and to provide a good guest experience. And in fact, the provincial government plays a very active role in promoting tourism in this region through advertising, through publishing visitor guides, and through subsidizing certain programs and industries. Halifax is a city that has a very positive relationship with tourism. The city has gone through a number of extremely positive changes over the past 25 years, and I think a large part of this is because there are increasing numbers of visitors who are interested in coming here on their vacation. Those of us who live in Halifax and in Nova Scotia derive a great deal of benefit from this increase in tourism. When visitors come here and spend money at local hotels and restaurants and other businesses, they do a lot to improve the economic standing of the region and also provide an improvement to the quality of the services that are available to those of us who live here.
My name is Antoinette, and I'll be speaking on the subject of accessibility for those with disabilities in my group. We observed 3 different times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening, at the Spring Garden location, the crossing between Dresden Row and Spring Garden. Approximately 3 people were observed using either a manual or an electrical wheelchair to cross the street. Ramps put in place made it easily possible for electrical wheelchairs and manual wheelchairs to cross from one side to the next, as did weather conditions. However, if it was raining or even if it was winter, the same could not be said. Also, the sidewalks were quite narrow, which made it more difficult for pedestrians to maneuver around the wheelchairs, as the light went green for pedestrians. Wheelchair users have to know how to use the wheelchair appropriately in the first place before even getting to the street to avoid as many pedestrians obstacles as possible. However, using a wheelchair in the city allows for great independence and autonomy, and each person with a wheelchair that was observed did not have a person or a partner walking with them to help them or even to walk with them in general. They seemed fairly confident and did not display any facial expression or frustratedness. Having the wheelchair allowed them to do things such as visiting family and friends, running their own errands, and going to hobbies or social groups, and engaging in cultural and community events, and visiting public places on their own. If sidewalks were not ramped, they could not be as independent as they needed to be, and not move as easily throughout the city. Also, if the sidewalks were not smooth, they would also not be able to move around the city as much and as easy. Overall, observing people moving throughout the city was an interesting experience, and the project itself allowed us to reflect deeper than we would on a daily basis on how people move around the city and what hinders them and what helps them.
My name is Yosefia Williams, and the occupation of focus here is panhandling, which can be considered an unsanctioned occupation. Now, the personal factors that contribute to an occupation such as panhandling would be the physical aspect. Some panhandlers stay all day, like you would see in the video. This gentleman is here all day. And so it requires a lot of physical strength, and it can take a toll on a person's body and physical abilities. Emotionally, a person that has to panhandle can be affected by so many stresses of homelessness, stresses of unemployment. So that can take a toll on mental health. So there's a huge emotional impact that goes with panhandling. Now, some other aspects to consider is the social impact. And socially, panhandling is not accepted, and persons who do it are isolated. So you don't have social support, and you don't have that confidence that people don't believe that you are lazy or you just don't want to get a job. So these are some aspects that come with social implications. Political implications, however, is a huge factor that can determine whether or not persons will have to do things like do occupations like panhandling. And the implications are that politically there can be changes made to affect persons who have to do jobs like panhandling, like policies and social assistance and living wage and job availability. Those are some things that are that can be addressed just through political implications.
I'm Caroline Robinson, and I'll be discussing my observations on the occupation of driving. All sorts of people engaged in driving from what I observed. Males and females of different ages were participating more in leisure driving, compared to those who participated in driving buses, taxis, delivery trucks, and tour buses. Seemed to be mostly male, maybe 35 to 50 years old. Person factors that can affect driving. You need to have the ability to drive, to steer the vehicle, the ability to push the pedals and see where you're going. You need to recognize your surroundings, know your route, and keep your eyes on the road. You need to be able to make quick and safe decisions. Drivers need to keep calm and be alert when on the road, as mood can affect the way someone is driving. Driving can give a sense of pride and it can relieve stress. It can be rewarding to know that you've helped provide transportation for someone else, and overall gives a sense of independence. Environment and context factors include the time of day and weather conditions, which can all affect the visibility of driving. Where you're physically driving, if you're in the city, there are many more barriers such as pedestrians and traffic lights compared to driving on a highway. Driving is a way to interact with others, whether it's going over to a family or friend's house or just driving leisurely. As a driver, you have to follow laws and regulations, consider speed limits, and the right of way. Driving is a large part of many people's lives in one way or another, as it is a form of transportation. People drive because they need to commute to work, to pick up their children, or to get groceries. People want to drive because they like to drive. It allows people freedom to choose when and where they want to go. People are expected to drive because of commitments to friends or families or commitments to their employment. Things that would inhibit or facilitate driving include, first and foremost, having a license, having the means to rent or buy a car or access to a car, and having the funds to keep the car running. Family and upbringing would determine whether one participated in driving. Society and culture norms can also be factors. Overall, this was a very interesting project, and the 12:30 shoot was very overwhelming as there were so many people in Spring Garden, and I'm sure all of them were wondering what we were doing. Overall, the observation gave me greater insight into day-to-day occupations and factors that may affect them.